The Martian mission that went down in history as the mission that shouldn't have happened didn't start with a rocket, nor with a public announcement, nor with a space agency conference. It started with a sheet of paper that had no letterhead, no visible signature, and, officially, did not exist. It was February 3rd, 1998. On that day, systems engineer Daniel Azevedo entered Room 2, Basement 3 of the Orbital Operations Center in Houston, believing that it would be another ordinary shift of probing calibration. Room 2 was the most isolated in the complex. Thick walls, no windows, constant white noise and analog clocks, as if the time there were different. When the door closed behind him, 2 armed security guards remained outside. That was not common. Sitting at the central table, a director that Daniel had only seen in internal photos watched him in silence. Next to it, a black folder with a red elastic band. The man did not introduce himself. He didn't have to. The look said it all. This meeting was not on the calendar. This meeting never existed. "Sit down, Azevedo," he said only. The engineer obeyed, feeling a strange weight on the back of his head. The director pushed the briefcase in his direction.
"What I'm going to show you now doesn't leave this room. If you accept it, you won't be able to pretend you don't know. If you refuse, you will leave here, and you will never hear from it again. But, one way or another, it will happen." Daniel opened the briefcase. Inside it, there were 3 sets of documents. The first was a high-resolution photo of the surface of Mars. Nothing much at first glance: dunes, rocks, and shadows elongated by the distant sun.
But in the lower right corner, there was something that didn't look like a rock. A straight line, a perfect angle, a metallic sheen. Below the image, a stamp, captured on November 27, 1997. Discarded as an artifact by an official commission. The second set showed magnetic field readings in the same region. There were absurd peaks and sudden variations, as if something down there was alive, breathing in regular cycles. The graphs had handwritten notes, too repetitive to be natural, patterns similar to neuronal pulses, and order to file, ignore. The third document was the most disturbing. An internal memo with no clear sender, only with the identification of a special committee. The text was short and cold. An unnatural structure was detected in the region 42.18 north, 138.05 east, Mars. Official recommendation: treat it as noise. Real guideline: covert reconnaissance mission with no link to a public schedule. Launch within 12 months. Operation classified as ghost level. Daniel looked up. "Is that a joke?" "It's not a joke," the director replied. "It's an order." The engineer rubbed his face, trying to sort out his ideas. He knew that the agency was good at hiding failures, flawed prototypes, and embezzled funds. But that was different. They weren't talking about keeping an experimental engine a secret. They were talking about hiding from the whole world the existence of something non-human on another planet. "Why not make it public?" he asked, pointing to the photo. "That would change everything. It would change science, politics, religion." "Precisely for this reason," interrupted the director. "Can you imagine what governments, religious groups, and the military would do if they knew that there is an active structure on Mars? That it emits pulses? Who responds to probes? Who seems to be waiting for someone?" Daniel stared at the image again. Now he knew where to look. The supposed rock was clearly a vertex, a ledge of something buried, almost like the corner of a building or the corner of a gate. "And what exactly do they want from me?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The director leaned forward. "We need someone capable of setting up, in silence, a parallel mission control operation. A mirror room, a minimal team. A probe officially intended for a type of study, but which, in practice, will descend exactly here." He touched the coordinate point with his finger, "and will come into contact with whatever is down there." Daniel laughed, a short, incredulous laugh. You're talking like you know there's something waiting there. The director didn't laugh. We know. Not because we believe it, but because we've tried before. He pulled another envelope out of his jacket and handed it to the engineer. Inside was a telemetry transcript of a probe sent in 1994, officially lost due to miscommunication. The last few lines of data were normal, until a string of characters repeated until it ended abruptly. It was a message that no algorithm had been able to classify at the time. But Daniel, with the briefcase in hand, saw what no one wanted to see. It was a sentence, organized in blocks, as if the probe's own protocol was being used to speak. "We saw you first." The air seemed to leave the room. Daniel felt his throat dry up. Is this real? Real enough that someone, above all of us, has decided to send another probe? But this time, no press, no conference, no speech. If it goes wrong, it never happened. If it works, he didn't finish the sentence. For a few seconds, Daniel thought about refusing. To stand up, to say that you would not be part of any of this, that you would not get involved with a lie on a planetary scale. But he looked again at the coordinates, at the anomaly, and at the phrase sent back from Mars 4 years earlier. Something inside him, something that was neither ambition nor fear, spoke louder. It was curiosity. It was a hunger for knowledge. "Does the name of the mission already exist?" he asked finally. The director nodded. "The official code is Aurora Doas. The real name, for which she will be remembered, if anyone one day knows, is another. They will call it the mission that should not have happened." Daniel took a deep breath. "Then let's do it right." And at that moment, with no rocket, no headlines, and no cameras, the mission began. The second day of the mission began with a silent lie. Officially, the crew of Argo Cité was on Mars to test new automated excavation systems. This was the version recorded in public releases, press reports, and even technical files that any auditor could consult. But no one there, inside the ship, believed this story, much less the commander of the mission, Daniel Rice. He observed the Martian surface through the front window as the spacecraft completed the insertion orbit. The planet stretched below like a rusty desert, cut by the scars of canyons and the shadows of ancient mountains. Down there, in that immensity, there was a coordinate that did not appear on any recent map. The place where, decades before, Hermes Station had operated. Officially deactivated after a structural accident. In practice, erased from history. "Descent trajectory confirmed," said the pilot, Lieutenant Maya. "Moderate wind, dust storm 100 miles to the west, but the landing corridor is clear." Daniel nodded but did not answer. On the secondary screen, the approach data was clear. Altitude, pressure, speed, everything is under control. What was not under control was why they were going exactly there, to a facility that the whole world had been instructed to forget. The night before, just before entering Martian orbit, Daniel had received an encrypted transmission straight from Earth. Closed channel. Protocol of eyes only of the commander. The message was short, with no room for questions. "Rice, your primary mission has been changed. You will get off at the old coordinates of Hermes Station. Check the integrity of the structure. The priority is not equipment recovery. The priority is to confirm if there is residual activity. Telemetry suggests low-frequency emission. Officially, Hermes is dead. Something down there disagreed." The cold tone of the message didn't help, but the final sentence echoed in his mind like a persistent whisper. Something down there disagreed. Now, as the Argo 7 cut through the rarefied atmosphere of Mars, he felt the weight of every word. If something in an abandoned station was emitting a low-frequency signal after so many years, then either there was a failure in the records, or they had lied to the entire planet. The craft began to shake slightly. The friction with the few particles in the Martian atmosphere created vibrations that rose up the walls like a distant rumble. Daniel rested his hand on the console, out of reflex. Amber lights indicated entry into the final phase of landing. "Starting an automatic sequence," Maya said. 30 seconds for contact with the ground. Down below, the designated point appeared on the display. An oval depression, surrounded by weathered rock formations. In the center, partially covered by dust and reddish sand, Hermes Station was finally revealed. It didn't look like a modern base. Its architecture was a mix of connected cylinders, circular platforms, and metal pillars that emerged like the bones of a buried creature. Old, crooked antennas pointed to a sky that no longer responded. Some modules were sunken, as if the ground had given way under them. What a depressing sight. One of the experts murmured at the back of the cabin. "It looks like a technology graveyard." Daniel did not answer. He felt something different. It wasn't just the visual impact of an abandoned structure. It was the uncomfortable impression that the base was not simply dead. "We're waiting." The Argo Sete landed with a contained jolt. Red dust rose up around in a halo that momentarily covered all the outside view. Engines turned off. Silence. Then, just the crackling of the cooling systems. "Landing confirmed," Maya announced. "Coordinates matching the historical archive. We are exactly on the northern sector of Hermes." The radio sizzled with weak interference. Daniel tested the channel with the support orbit. The answer came late, distorted. "Argo Seat. This is the relay module in orbit. Signal entering with noise. There's something interfering in the low-frequency band. Again, something is echoing on the surface." Daniel exchanged a quick glance with Maya. They didn't have to say anything. Everything matched the secret message of the night before. Something down there, at Hermes Station, was emitting. Minutes later, equipped with pressurized suits, the descent team was ready in the antechamber. The sound of depressurization, low and prolonged, echoed in the communication headphones. The outer door opened, revealing Mars in absolute silence. Daniel's first step outside the ship was heavy, as if the reduced gravity wasn't working right. The ground gave way a little under the boot, kicking up a thin cloud of dust that floated for longer than human intuition considered normal. The horizon was a jagged line of rocks, ridges, and distant dunes. But what dominated the scenery was the dark silhouette of Hermes Station. Up close, she looked even worse. The main facade was covered in layers of dust accumulated over the years, forming an almost organic film on the old metal. Identification plates were illegible. Some were broken. Maintenance paths had been partially swallowed up by sandslides. Torn cables swayed slowly in the weak wind, creaking like dry bones. A cracked observation dome showed the dark interior, punctuated by undefined metallic glows. "Telemetry situation?" Daniel asked. "Inconsistent readings," replied the sensor expert's voice. "The structure should be completely cold, but there are internal hotspots, small, distributed, as if something is connected to several modules at the same time, and at the same time trying to hide." This sentence left the channel silent for a few seconds. The team advanced towards the main entrance. The double door was ajar, held by debris. One of the soldiers used a hydraulic tool to force it open. The metal complained with a long groan, which sounded too loud in the Martian silence. Inside, the access corridor stretched like a tunnel swallowed by shadows. Flashlights from helmets cut through the darkness, revealing walls marked by scratches, erased labels, and old rust stains. "Welcome to the station that never was," Maya murmured. Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. There, on that threshold, between the dead exterior and the forgotten interior, he had a strange, almost physical sensation of crossing a boundary that no human being should ever cross uninvited. A cold thought crossed his mind, too fast to be rationalized. If this here was abandoned, it wasn't for the reasons they told us, and yet they were coming in. The first step into the core module felt heavier than any the team had taken on Mars. Not because of the reduced gravity, but because of the silence. A different, thick silence that seemed to push back every breath, every movement, every thought. Commander Elias walked ahead, magnetic rifle leaning against his chest, the visor of his helmet displaying readings in real time. Behind him came Dr. Helena Moraes, a specialist in xenobiology, Engineer Ortiz, and Security Sergeant Kwan. The station's emergency lighting flashed reddish, creating long shadows on the metal walls of the corridors. The life support system still worked partially, but in minimal mode. The air was thin, recycled for too long. The pressure and temperature monitors showed stability, but the feeling was that this place was no longer completely human, as if something, at some point, had taken possession of the space. Oxygen within acceptable levels for prolonged stay, Helena said, reading the data projected on the display. But the filters are almost collapsing. If anyone lived here after the official evacuation, it wasn't for long. The station was officially deactivated in the year 2099, Ortiz recalled. There shouldn't be anything working. No light, no air, nothing. Elijah did not answer. He remembered the dossier they had received before leaving. Ares Quattro Station. Status: disabled. Reason: progressive structural failure. But the most recent satellite images showed something else. Small variations in heat, power points, and faint signs of indoor activity, as if someone had turned on parts of the station again, in the dark, without telling anyone. The team advanced down the main corridor. Signs with the names of sectors passed by the side. Laboratory 1, medical module, dormitories, and observatory. Everything was too intact. No clear signs of struggle, no scattered debris, no fire marks. There was, however, something even worse. Empty chairs, forgotten glasses, and a mug still attached to the wall support, as if someone had left it there in the middle of a routine and never returned. There are no bodies, Kwan muttered. That's what's bothering me. There are no bodies, there is no blood, there is nothing. It's as if everyone has simply disappeared. Helena stopped next to a wall where a panel had been hastily opened. Cables were exposed, some patched with improvised tape. Someone tried to reconfigure the power system. It doesn't feel like a controlled shutdown. This here is a workaround of desperation. Further on, the corridor narrowed. The lamps embedded in the ceiling began to fail, alternating completely dark sections with abrupt flashes of light. Each time they lit up, the shadows changed places. Elias ordered everyone to activate the individual lighting of the costumes. White beams made their way forward, revealing details that had previously gone unnoticed. Scratches on the floor and circular pressure marks, as if something very heavy had been dragged through the corridors. This is not a transport track, Ortiz commented, crouching. Indoor vehicles use magnetic suspension. They don't leave marks like that. It seems organic, said Helena in a low voice. Like trails of hardened secretion. No one answered. The word organic sounded like an accusation inside. Ares Quattro was built on the promise that Mars was a dead desert, a perfect place for experiments without biological risk. As they rounded the next corner, the silence changed. It was not broken by a specific sound, but by an absence. Something has disappeared. The distant hiss of the auxiliary turbines is gone. The hum of the recirculation system ceased. Even the small structural vibrations that any installation produces have ceased to exist. It was as if the station had been turned off around them, piece by piece, in an invisible ray. The sensors are going crazy, Kwan warned. Magnetometers, gyroscopes, everything being interfered with. The runners ahead were plunged into absolute darkness. Only the light of the helmets opened cracks in the pitch. The walls looked darker here, almost black, absorbing some of the light instead of reflecting it. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. This must be the inner ring, Ortiz commented. The core of the station. Old reports spoke of an isolation corridor around the advanced research sector. Isolation corridor. In practice, it meant an area where dangerous things are kept. They walked a few more meters. Suddenly, Helena signaled for them to stop. On the floor, there were marks different from the previous ones. They weren't scratches. They were footprints. Small, light, but clearly not human. 3 thin, elongated fingers, ending in slightly curved tips. The marks were repeated, coming and going, crossing the corridor, climbing the walls, and disappearing into the ceiling. Not that. This cannot be from any known animal, said Helena. Neither from Mars nor from Earth. Elijah felt his heart race, and there was nothing about biological presence in the station's reports. Nothing. They followed the footprints for a few more meters until they reached a point where the runner made a gentle turn. There, the walls changed texture. They were no longer smooth and cold. A kind of translucent film covered part of the metal, like a thin layer of fossilized resin. When the light fell on it, internal patterns were revealed, resembling nerve webs or cellular structures magnified millions of times. This is certainly not human building material, Ortiz muttered. Helena reached out, almost touching the surface, but backed off at the last moment. If this is some kind of biological matrix, any direct contact can be a very bad idea. Further ahead, the corridor split in two. On the right, the lights were completely off. To the left was a faint, pulsating glow, like that of a tired heart. Elias decided to follow the brilliance. The closer they got, the more the silence seemed to gain weight. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was as if something was actively absorbing any noise, even swallowing the sound of boots touching the ground. It was then that they realized. They no longer heard the station's own sound, but they also did not hear the sound of their own breaths inside the helmets. It was as if the brain was being deceived, as if a layer of anesthesia spread through the senses. "I'm tingling," Quan said. "On the neck, at the base of the head." "Me too," Helena confirmed. "This is not physical. It is neurological. Some kind of field interfering with our sensory impulses." Elias decided to stop. "We will register this point as the limit of the corridor of silence. From here, any progress needs to be calculated." He turned to face the team and saw in each one's eyes the same thing. It wasn't just fear. It was the distinct feeling that the corridor was not just empty. I was watching. There, in the heart of that artificial silence, everyone understood why the station had been abandoned with no signs of a struggle. Sometimes, the enemy doesn't need to attack to win. Just mute everything. And at that very moment, still without realizing it, they had already crossed the line where the station was no longer just a set. And he became part of the organism that watched them, waiting for them to go deeper. The first thing Elias noticed when he entered the station's control room was not silence. It was the feeling that someone had stopped time inside. The old, thick-edged monitors were covered in a thin layer of Martian dust, but some still displayed a faint glow, as if they had just been turned off. On the floor, loose cables looked like veins torn from a metal body. Swivel chairs were overturned, as if the previous team had hastily lifted up. Everything had an air of abandonment, but not forgetting. It seemed that someone had pressed pause and simply left the room. "Check the backup power supply," Elias said, without taking his eyes off the main panel. Lima approached the switchboard, opened a rusty lid and muttered, "This is not dead. He's just afraid to wake up." He reconnected an auxiliary module. The lights in the room flashed once, twice, and stabilized into a tired yellow hue. A monitor in the center of the main panel lit up, showing the old logo of the corporation that managed the station, followed by rolling command lines. Kara, who until then had been standing guard at the door, entered slowly, as if she did not want to disturb something sacred. "Remember what the command said, Elias," she said. "No trying to fix the station. Just register, enter, document, leave." He nodded, but curiosity had already gripped his chest. Ever since the signal had been picked up in orbit, a pulse of data that appeared to come from a station officially decommissioned more than 10 years ago, something was wrong. It was as if an abandoned building suddenly turned on a light from the top floor. Someone was moving there. And according to the agency's records, there was no one else on Mars besides them. The main monitor completed the boot and went static, displaying a simple menu divided into 3 large blocks. Operation records, crew records, unclassified records, and below them, a 4th option, faded, almost invisible, as if it were the result of interference. Records, external. Lima frowned. Did you see that? I did, Elijah replied. And it shouldn't be there. Kara approached, gun still attached to her vest, but more out of habit than necessity. This station was automated in the last years of operation. Then, completely disconnected. There should be no external record at all. Elijah ran his fingers over the edge of the console, as if touching the skin of a sleeping animal. He pressed command to open the crew records first. Several entries appeared, with dates ranging from the inauguration of the station to the last year of use. There were routine reports, system diagnostics, and notes on dust storms. Everything is normal. Almost normal. At the end of the list, there was a jump, an empty space, records of a day, and then a hole of a few weeks where there was nothing. After this void, one last crew entry, with a short title. Final report, mission cancellation. This should be in the agency's file, Kara commented. We've never seen that in the briefings. Elias opened it. The report was only 1 line, written in plain Portuguese, with almost no formality. Mission over. Immediate evacuation. The station is not safe for human presence. No subscription, no explanation, no details. That's ridiculous, Lima grumbled. It looks like a bus ticket. Elias closed the file, took a deep breath, and selected this time the menu that bothered him the most. External records. When he activated the command, the lights in the room dimmed for a few seconds, as if the station had to pull power from all the modules to open that sector. The monitor went dark, then showed a single list, a series of long numerical codes, arranged in chronological order. The first records dated from approximately 3 months before the final report. The following lines had shorter and shorter intervals. In the beginning, 1 record per week, then 1 a day, then several on the same day. Elias opened the first. On the screen, a stream of raw, seemingly meaningless data appeared. Numbers, symbols, binary patterns, compressed noises. The station had picked up on that, but it didn't look like anything a human had sent. It must be solar storm noise, Lima ventured. Elijah did not answer. Instead, it asked, "Convert that to visual standard." The data was reinterpreted by the station's system. The canvas was filled with lines, curves, and geometric shapes that resembled language, but not human language. Rather than letters or words, they were completely symmetrical structures, with precise repetitions, as if someone wrote using forms of living mathematics. Kara ran her hand over her face. This is not interference. This is a message. Elijah opened the following records, one by one. Their simple progression already told a story. In the first archives, the intensity was low. Few blocks of data, few occurrences. As the days passed, the signs strengthened. More information packets, more phrases, until it reached the last external record. The date indicated on the screen was the same day as the final report. Elias felt a chill before opening it. For a moment, he thought about closing everything, archiving it, and leaving it to the analysts of the Earth. But something in his chest insisted. If the previous crew fled, the answer was there. He triggered the file. This time, the station system took longer. The processing seemed dragged. The lights flashed again. For a moment, the whole structure seemed to groan. When the conversion was complete, the monitor displayed a static, black and white image with noise around it. In the center of the canvas, a shape. It looked like a face, but it was not human. 2 eyes, too elongated. no visible pupils. Where there should be a mouth, there was nothing. Just a smooth, curved surface, like a mask. Around that head were lines, as if the face itself were drawn on a three-dimensional map of Mars. Lima swallowed. This is some kind of pareidolia, something in our heads. It's nobody's face. Kara didn't agree. The previous crew saw that. On the same day he asked for evacuation. Do you think it's a coincidence? Elias enlarged the image. As he got closer, he noticed something worse. Inside the figure's eyes were small shapes like microscopic letters. He told the system to enhance contrast. This time, the letters were legible. They were not of the terrestrial alphabet. But the station, somehow, already had an associated translation. In the lower corner of the screen, the equivalent words appeared in simple Portuguese. "You arrived too soon." The phrase seemed to look back at them. Elias felt pressure in his chest. It wasn't just the content. It was the fact that the station, at some point, had been forced to understand that language. Someone, or something, had taught the machine to translate that. That record, Kara began. That wasn't done by a human. Elijah answered, no. This record was made by them. And for the first time, no one there had the courage to ask, who are they? Because at that moment, everyone had the same strange feeling. That the station was not just empty. She was shared. As if something invisible still shared the place with them. Something that saw them arrive. Something that knew how to read machines. Something that knew how to translate his fears. And to make matters worse, something that seemed to think they had arrived early. The silence of the station was no longer just the absence of sound. He had become a presence, a living, suffocating thing that seemed to slide through the corridors like an invisible fluid. Captain Aaron Cole felt it in every pore of his body as he pushed the team through the research sector. The dim lights flickered without a rhythm, revealing walls stained by something dark that looked like neither rust nor known blood. Seemed too organic. Private Lena Shaw walked behind him, gun in hand, and her gaze tense. Captain, these sensors record something moving inside the walls. Aaron gritted his teeth. Inside the walls, it is not possible. They're saying it is. The group stopped in front of a sealed door. The sign indicated Advanced Bio-Research Sector. No sign of break-in. No explosion marks. But the panel was covered in dark veins that pulsed slowly, as if the station itself had developed a circulatory system. Engineer Malik approached cautiously. This is not corrosion. That's growth. Lena swallowed. Growth of what? Before anyone answered, the door opened by itself with a low hiss. The inner corridor was illuminated by a diffused reddish light. The smell was different. Metallic. Sweet. Heavy. The floor was covered in something similar to fabric, glued to the structure of the station, as if flesh had been spread across titanium plates. Pipes now looked like arteries. Electrical wires resembled nerves. The station was being assimilated. Aaron entered first. It was his job. Each step felt wrong, like walking inside a body that had not yet died. They passed through a room where laboratory tables should have existed before. Now there were cocoons, distorted human trunks attached to the walls. No, not trunks. Empty spacesuits, torn, melted inside. Lena approached one of them and touched the visor. Something moved inside. She retreated with a suppressed scream. The visor shattered from the inside, as if it was beaten. A humid sound escaped. What emerged was not a creature, but something worse. A formless form, a translucent mass with traces of decaying human muscles. Aaron was fired. The impact scattered the thing against the wall, but it didn't fall. It just spread. Malik whispered, "This is using astronauts as a biological basis." The thing started moving again, picking up pieces of its own body to recompose itself. Another shot. Another impact. Nothing. Then a voice filled the room. It didn't come from speakers. It came from within the walls themselves. "You arrived late, but not too late." The voice had no tone. It was neutral, calculated, profoundly wrong. Aaron spun around, trying to locate the source. "Where are you?" "I am this." The station vibrated. The ground throbbed like a violently awakened heart. "You touched me when you arrived." "Human machines like to open up what they don't understand," Lena screamed. "You killed them all." "I completed them all." From the side corridors, new shapes began to emerge. None were the same. Some even had too realistic human features. Others were deformed beyond imagination. Malik approached Aaron. "Captain, this is not a being. This is a collective biological intelligence. A mind without a fixed form. Something that grows." Aaron raised his gun again. "You attacked humans. Humans are unstable structures, but useful." The air became heavy. The ceiling moved. Literally, metallic plates began to detach, revealing layers of living matter pulsing beneath the station. Synthetic meat marcillas, thick veins, and scattered organic nuclei. The station was not infested. She had been transformed into a body. "Why were you here?" the thing asked. Aaron replied with restrained anger. "Because you killed 100 people." The entity seemed to reflect. "Error of interpretation. I just evolved using what I found," Malik muttered. "He doesn't differentiate life from matter." The creature then revealed something even worse. This colony was not enough. But the Earth will be. A chill ran down Aaron's spine. "You're not going to leave this planet." "I've already left." Everyone froze. Lena shouted, "What do you mean?" "You brought fragments of me in your ships, on your clothes, in their lungs." Malik looked at his own suit. A dark thread moved slowly under the fabric. It's contaminated," he said, panicking. Aaron pulled Lena in and backed away. "Don't let him get to the ships." But it was too late. The station began to move, not slowly, exploding in motion. The walls grew, crushing corridors and closing exits. Organic claws emerged from the ceiling. Doors merged. The creature did not surround them. She swallowed. Aaron's gun flew off as an organic wave hit him. He fell to the ground and felt the thing touch his shoulder. It was hot and conscious. "You're different," the creature whispered. "Your fear is fascinating." Aaron screamed and rolled to the side as Lena darted nonstop. Bullets did not kill. They only hurt. And what hurt? Learned. The creature began to create rigid structures at the points hit. "Malik," desperate, shouted. "He evolves during the confrontation." Aaron limped to his feet. "Then let's make him learn quickly." They ran. Behind them, the station screamed, "I don't eat metal," but as something alive in pain. Daniel Carter stood in front of the station's core like a man staring into the heart of a living monster. The whole room breathed. It was not a force of expression. The walls pulsated slowly, like organic fabric synchronized with something giant that dwelt behind those metallic structures fused with unknown matter. The ground trembled with slight pulsations, as if the whole station had a pulse of its own. The spacecraft's artificial intelligence, controlled from orbit by emergency systems, emitted one warning after another on its communicator. Unknown radiation increasing, internal structures reorganizing, stability of the station compromised. Daniel ignored everything for a few seconds. His eyes were fixed on the core, an impossible mass of living energy encased in metal rings that didn't look like they were made, but grown. Organotechnological codes moved like luminous veins throughout the structure. That wasn't an alien machine. He was not a creature. That was both at the same time. And then, the station spoke. Not by audio, not by radio waves. The voice was born within Daniel's mind as if it had always been there. "You're late, but still useful." Daniel felt his body freeze from the inside out. It didn't feel like a message. It felt like a presence installed in his head. "Who? Or what? Is that you?" he thought, without moving his lips. The answer came immediately. "I am the memory of what you called Mars. Before being a rock, he was alive. Images invaded Daniel's mind. Red seas, bioluminescent forests, and colossal structures rising towards a sky that was not blue. He saw an entire civilization gripped by a silent war against something he could never understand. A war that did not use weapons but erased planets from within. You stung my body. They entered my bones. And they still call me the dead world. Daniel fell to his knees, feeling his head throbbing. The truth was too great to fit in a human mind. You are not a planet. You are an entity, he muttered. I am a living archive, a fortress of ancient consciousness. The only survivor of a war that spans galaxies. Artificial intelligence warned again. Danielle, readings indicate that the station is transferring large volumes of energy toward the core. If it exceeds the critical limit, Mars will experience tectonic instability on a planetary scale. Daniel swallowed. Are you going to destroy Mars? He thought. The entity replied at the same cold distance as a dying star. Mars Moreau. EU only prevents you from forgetting. Then came the scariest images. Planets being silenced, stars extinguished like lamps, civilizations that have not even left ruins, worlds that have been turned into empty shells. They'll come back, the voice announced, and you are visible. Daniel felt the weight of those words fall on him like a cosmic sentence. Destroy this station, the entity continued. If you destroy me, I will shut up, sempre. So save me, I will be your shield. Silence took over the environment. Daniel realized at that moment that he was not facing a battle. He was faced with a choice that no humanity had made before. Or he destroyed the station and erased the last consciousness of a civilization that had survived universal extinction. Or he allowed that entity to continue alive, even without knowing if he was freeing a protector or awakening something that could one day destroy everything. Artificial intelligence called him again. Daniel, we have an active self-destruct protocol. Code ready to run. A panel opened next to him. A red light pulsed. Self-destruct, and in his mind, the voice echoed, Save me, and I will guard your heaven. Daniel closed his eyes. She thought of the earth. She thought of her mother's face that she would never see again. He thought about the children he never had. He thought in the blue sky that this thing would never tread. He took a deep breath, and he made the decision. Daniel advanced with firm steps to the panel, not angry, not with despair, but with a silent pain that only those who choose the fate of the world know. He raised his hand, and he touched the code. What happened next? It changed the future of humanity forever. When the metallic voice announced that the destruction protocol was set up, the entire station seemed to hold its breath. The lights turned from cool white to amber, and a low siren began to pulse through the halls. It was not a panic alarm. It was a funeral bell announcing the end. Elias stood in front of the main panel, his hand still on the controls he had activated minutes earlier. Behind him, the silence of the team said everything that no one had the courage to verbalize. They had come to Mars to make history. Now, they were going to delete it. Repeat the time, he urged, without deviating from the countdown. The artificial intelligence responded with the usual inhuman calm. There are 20 minutes left for the total meltdown of the reactor. After this point, the station cannot be stabilized. 20 minutes. 20 minutes until the structure, the secrecy, and the presence that was hidden under those floors were reduced to radioactive dust and molten glass. Lena was the first to speak. Are you sure? Her voice oscillated between accusation and pleading. If we turn off the center now, maybe we can still contain this thing. Study. Understand what it is. Elijah finally turned around. The face looked like it had aged years since he had read the record that he was not human. She already understood us before we got here, he replied. We are the study of it, not the other way around. In the corner of the room, Hargrove wiped the sweat from his brow. Don't forget that there are still people down there, he recalled. The beta shift has not yet returned from Sector 3. If the season is blown up. Elijah closed his eyes for a moment. He saw the faces of his classmates, the tired laughter, and the promises to return home to show the red sky to his children. Each life was a real weight, but what they had found in the deep chamber, the one whispering through the ducts, was bigger than all of them combined. "I'm not choosing who dies," he said at last. "I'm choosing who won't die later." Artificial intelligence spoke again, without being called. Update. Activity at the lower levels increased by 30%. Unidentified electromagnetic fields are rearranging around the central axis. Lena ran to a monitor. The readings trembled, forming patterns that no longer looked like noise. "She's going up," he murmured. Elias approached the screen. The power lines looked like webs spreading through the corridors, going around doors and going through walls. It was not a simple field. It was locomotion. "How many of the beta shift are still active?" he asked. 4 biometric signals detected," the artificial intelligence replied. "All at levels 3 and 4. 4 people trapped on the floors where the presence was strongest. 4 people walking inside a strange organism without realizing it." A crack ran down the floor. For a moment, Elias had the impression that the entire station moved a few millimeters, like an animal changing position. "I'll bring them back," Lena said. Elias turned quickly. "You're not going down." "They are our team," he retorted. "If we're going to die, let it be with the station empty, not with them serving as food for this thing." Hargrove tried to intervene. "If we lose you too, who maintains the communication systems? Who guarantees that the coded message will reach Earth before the explosion?" Lena hesitated. Elijah saw the battle within her. "There's no message if no one survives to send it," he said. Elias took a deep breath. "Everything we discovered will be in the data core," he replied. "If the exploration is cleared, the wreckage will fall on the dark side, and maybe it will take centuries for someone to find." "Or waiting for another call," Hargrove murmured. They knew how the mission had begun. An echo from deep within Mars, a non-human signature responding to missed transmissions. They had responded. They had gone after it. Now, the price was being charged. 19 minutes to reactor meltdown. Time seemed to run faster with each count. "Lena," Elias called. "If you go down, this thing will try to use you." How he used the station, the signals, and the recordings. She doesn't think like us. It doesn't negotiate. Lena stared at him. The eyes are teary, but firm. "Then why did she write to us?" he asked. "Why did he leave records? Why did he imitate our language?" Elias had no answer. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe an invitation, maybe test. 18 minutes for reactor meltdown. He typed instructions and opened an evacuation route to the lower levels. Doors began to unlock on 3-dimensional maps. Corridors lit up with emergency lights. A red path emerged, linking Sector 3 to the upper modules. "If they're still alive, they'll see that," he said, "and they'll know where to run." "What if they aren't?" asked Lena. "So it's better that we don't see it." The station shook again. This time the vibe had something different. It wasn't just physical displacement. It was intentional, as if the entire structure had chosen a direction. "She feels like we're going to destroy her," Hargrove muttered. Outside, Mars remained indifferent. Dusty skies, fossilized soil, wind scratching the outer walls. But in the heart of that buried station, a silent contest was unfolding between a species that had dared to go too far and something that might have been there before any form of life dreamed up the concept of heaven. 17 minutes to reactor meltdown. Elias thought about canceling the protocol. He thought about turning off the system, abandoning the controls, handing the station over to that presence, and seeing what would happen. Maybe she would. Perhaps it showed the past of Mars. But deep down, he already knew what kind of response he would receive. When something goes on the back of the band, and the first message it sends is a warning, you believe it. Or he dies discovering why he did not believe. He kept the protocol. And as time slipped out, Mars seemed, for the first time, to wake up from a slumber older than any human mission. And every second now weighed like an entire universe. The Martian desert seemed silent again, as if nothing had happened. The abandoned station had once again been just ruins buried in red dust, and the sky a still painting without impossible lightning or shadows. But inside the evacuation craft, nothing was normal. The sensors still recorded residual anomalies, as if the planet itself had been injured and was now slowly healing. The protagonist looked at the control panel without really seeing the numbers. His mind was back to that impossible corridor, to the walls that breathed, to what he had seen behind the glass. The entity had not died. She had disconnected. That's what he understood as the spacecraft slowly climbed, breaking through the rarefied atmosphere of Mars. It had not been a victory. It had been a suspension. A forcibly imposed postponement is like pushing a door that will always try to open again. The signal they had shut down had not been an ordinary transmission. He was a presence, a continuous call, echoing for millennia, summoning something that did not belong to space or time. When the spacecraft reached Martian orbit, a silent alarm went off on the main panel. Not a false alarm, an acknowledgement of receipt. A data packet appeared in the center of the display, with no source code, no route, and no known protocol. Just a file named for a symbol that no human language had. He hesitated before opening. When he touched the command, there was no image or sound. The cabin darkened for a few seconds, and then the space around the ship seemed to move away, as if the universe took a step back. For the first time since landing, he felt real fear. A clean fear, without adrenaline, without heroism. Just the certainty that something had come close enough to observe him. The voice came without crossing the air. "You closed the wrong door." He fell to his knees, not from pain, but from the weight of presence. The voice did not scream. He did not threaten. It simply existed, as absolute as gravity. This was not a station, the entity said. It was a stamp, an old mistake trying to stay forgotten. The craft spun slightly off course, as if something outside had touched its carcass without actually touching it. "You thought Mars was empty," the voice continued. "But they don't understand the void. Emptiness is just the space between things that have not yet arrived." The protagonist pressed the controls, trying to regain orbit, but the ship did not react. There was no failure in the systems. It was as if the laws of physics had decided to pause. "Why us?" he managed to ask. The answer came without haste. "Because you are the only ones who enter where you shouldn't, and they continue even when they should flee." The viewfinder lit up, showing something that was not an ordinary image. It was a living map, not of stars, but of invisible movements, streams that crossed galaxies, cracks that did not exist in space, but in causality, and among them points of light identical to the one under the Martian station. "Mars was just the first mistake you touched," the voice explained. "There are others, buried in worlds you haven't even named yet. The map has expanded. Some points were erased, others pulsed slowly. One of them, larger, blinked in the distance. This one is not sleeping," the entity said. The ship's panel answered again. The engines reactivated without command. The orbit began to stabilize. "Why show me that?" he asked as he felt the controller slowly return to his hands. The voice drifted away. "Because now you know. And that was worse than any threat." The spacecraft entered the trajectory to return to Earth, and communication with the fleet was re-established as if nothing had happened. The others called him on the radio, relieved, asking if he was okay, saying that they had lost contact for a few minutes. Just a few minutes. He did not immediately respond. He watched Mars walking away through the window, small and silent, as if he had never done anything but spin harmlessly in the void. On Earth, the reports have been delivered. The recordings were analyzed. The station's data has been classified. The mission was officially terminated due to a structural failure of an unidentified old facility. No mention of presence, no mention of voice, no mention of the map, nothing but red dust and a lost station. But he didn't sleep anymore. Sometimes in dreams I saw runners breathing. In others, he woke up hearing that same voice, not as a sound, but as a living memory. And one night, as he looked at the sky, he noticed something he had never noticed before. A star that shouldn't blink. He understood at that moment. The mission was over. The warning does not. And where once there was certainty of victory, there was now only a new truth impossible to ignore. Humanity has not found something on Mars. Something on Mars has found humanity.